but I don't know exactly how that would work on the presenter end. But like down where we have our level add and our level subtract, because those ones are almost identical. I don't know if like we need an interface or maybe an abstract class so that we can just actually that the I'm just trying to remember all the things we've learned about interface and abstract classes, where like the only thing that's going to be different, like on the level add, which is like adding your next level in, like if it's the positives, then you're going to call add level, and if it's the negatives, you're going to call sub level. So if we could just figure out a way to just call the one, and I removed the level sub one, and I was trying to think about how we could have just the level add, and then inside there it could choose which one. But as I was reading other things, it's like, making a switch statement is not great. You should have an interface. And so I'm like,
I think they have the interfaces in the main. I mean, in the view one, and not the.
Some have it in the presenter, and some have it in the so in his scripture power UML, he's got an interface in his presenter. It's the listener right there. And so you're like, okay, so that interface, like what is it actually doing as an interface? Because it's the fragments that are implementing it. But
yeah, I think we can put ours underneath presenter, since it's doing what was it? I wrote it down, darn it. It's a function for computing stuff. Blah, blah, blah.
What is
the interface that's supposed to pull it through and cycle it through so that we can continue? It'll basically be a function, right?
Well, the interface itself doesn't do anything. It just forces you to implement a specific one. So like it's not going to do anything itself. And so like if we look at his main presenter listener, main presenter listener is not even what the heck? He doesn't even have his interface in here.
Other than the in the center, almost all the way to the right.
It's in our
right. Yeah, there.
It's in the UML, and like it's in here, but there's not like an interface class,
Right.
It's just listed. So you've got that main presenter listener present in the main presenter.
So it doesn't look like it's necessary. We can just do it through calling classes.
Well, yes, but the reason it's helpful is like if you can do it right, because like he's doing everything with the listener, but like what the heck is it even doing? Because it doesn't tell us what it's doing. So, for example,
he really should have notes with it, like, or a video. Something.
I just am he suggested that we can meet with him as a group, but I don't even know what questions to ask, because it's still like I have no idea. But tomorrow he has one-on-one availability. So are you guys available tomorrow? This is 11:15 my time, so that would be 10:15 Elizabeth and 9:15 for Ariel.
I don't think he can meet that early.
Well, he only has 3 options, so.
Yeah, well, he hasn't been meeting on time anyways. I don't think he's been checking anything.
Are the instructor?
No. Our Ariel.
He's here.
Is he? I haven't
Yeah.
heard him. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so are you guys
Awesome.
okay? Like, I think we should set up a time, and hopefully we can figure out some stuff today, but I still think it would be good to meet with him tomorrow so that we can be recording Wednesday, because at this point we can record a whole bunch of crap, but like I don't know anything. I can talk and say this is what it should do, but I'm just making it all up because I don't know and I can't implement it. But so yeah, like if we want to record Wednesday, we need to meet him tomorrow. So which of those times, like this is Eastern time,
I'm
which of
good
those
with
would
any
work
of
best?
those.
Yeah, me too. I prefer the 11:30.
11:30. Okay.
That's 9:30 for you, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Group 15. Oh, that's not right. So let me just put it in my calendar so I don't forget, because that would be unfortunate.
Will you share that Zoom link in our?
Yeah, it's actually that one right there, but I'll put it in there. Yeah, it's like
Okay.
his same.
It's just his classroom one.
I think so.
Okay.
Come on, 11:30 a.m. Nice. Just a second. Instructor group 15. Okay. And over here, Tuesday, 10:30 Mountain Time. Okay, so that's posted in our Slack, and we're good with that. And okay, so since our UML is kind of closer to this one than his, because it's a little bit more basic, but we do have some things that this one doesn't. Like just trying to use this example. So like instead of a drink list, we have a user, and that's like our player user, and it has all those things needed to populate a new game from where we left off, or to start a game from scratch. So then we also would have our file helper, which is going to either be saving the class, the user class, or else just doing a shared preferences save. Either whatever that is, that's related in that way. And I believe that it is inheritance. That our user class is a no, that doesn't work. Anyway, so then we don't have a drink class. We don't have a config class right now. So then
I thought
we
the
just
config was where they save the information.
that's where he does it in some of them, but well, so no. If you look at the scripture one, so you've got a file helper, which does all of your reading and writing. You've got your HTTP helper, which is doing all of your URL connections for your API. And then your config, he took the file helper stuff and he's converting all the JSON and JSON stuff in here, but he still has to pass it to the actual saving. So we can either do a config file that takes the user and changes it to a string, and so we can save it, or we can just do all of that in the file helper itself.
Oh, the file helper, that'd be better to just keep it in one.
It is a little easier because right here he has other things he's doing, and in the actual, so you can see the config file is like changing the font size, but I think you can actually choose to change it so that it's also configuring your font size in the save with everything and stuff too, like, or maybe that's just, it's not changeable, it's just where he's saving that information. But for me, that would be like part of your base class, but he doesn't really have a base class because he's just importing data. So anything that we need for the user, we just put in our user and we're like, hey user, here's your details. So we don't really need to change anything or
So
save anything in a specific state.
the number of stars earned can just be pulled out of the file helper or the file whatever.
No, it will be pulled from the user.
Okay.
So, nope.
Okay, that's
private
the info
int.
saved.
Okay, right. So I changed it to be star count. So, what else did I change? So yeah, I'm thinking about it all. So in our user, we have our count, which tells us which number we're at in our loop to know if we're going to pass the level or not. Our current level, which tells us what that first number is because it's our constant. The operator tells us if we're in adding or subtracting, and the star count is required in order to do our status presenter. So like that information will get passed every single time that users accessed, but it makes it available for what needs to happen. So the greet presenter is our main screen that says, hello, let's play our game. But there's also the star dashboard picture, whatever. So you can choose the star. So if you choose the star, you go to your status presenter, which, okay, so in our greet presenter, we also go to the greet activity right here. And that's where we have, everything has the onCreate, and then everything is gonna have a back button so that you can go, well, actually, the greet presenter wouldn't have a back button, right?
Right.
Because that's just the only screen.
That's the main page, yeah.
You can choose to show your stars or you can choose to play your game. So basically we would have two buttons. So one is the star button and one is the play button. And so after you do that, it's going to send that back to your greet presenter. So it's either you choose the status, which is your stars, or you choose your game. But see, that's where I'm like, because if you're choosing the on-click in your view, how is that letting the presenter know? Because those are technically doing the same thing. Like on show stars is the same as show status, and on play game is the same as choose game. So if the listener, but the listener's still implemented in the view, and I still don't understand how with passing back to the presenter what the thing was. So for what I understand at this point, if you wanted to see your stars, in your view, you click on show stars, and it's going to, inside that, send back to the greet presenter, oh, they want to see their stars. So now you need to show the status presenter. And the status presenter is going to show the status of your activity. But I don't know how those things move back and forth because like the only thing we've done like that is passing an intent to a new screen. But all that happened technically in your main activity, which is theoretically now my presenter, but I don't know how to do that.
Looking at his main presenter, it looks like all it does is calls the classes from the view. And it might have an if statement or a for statement to run through it. But it's, I don't know. It doesn't do as much work as I thought it would. It just is there.
It does like nothing. And
Yeah.
so like, where's all the work happening? And
in the view, it looks like.
Well, not even really. Like, there's just not a whole lot of work happening at all. So in the main activity, you've got your presenter, which is your main presenter, so that you have access to the presenter in the main activity. And so we've done that. We don't know how to use it, but we've got that because each one has to have its own access to the other so they can pass back and forth. And then presenter initialize. That's something.
Well, he does have,
And
the download library task class. That's his actual do. Was that? Yeah.
Where's
Uh,
that?
that's underneath presenters.
Well, but that's still a presenter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying for our add and subtract classes, that
Oh,
shows that it would go there. It just gets
yeah,
called in another
they're in the
part.
because they're not a storage of data; they're a process of data. So anything that's tested with logic or processing is a presenter. It's just how the heck do we move stuff back and forth? Um,
Isn't that why they import the at the very top they'll choose something that says import whatever from and then they have oh man, I'm
well,
sorry.
no, like that's why he's got like this private main presenter in the main activity. Like
Mhm.
that's giving you access to the presenter, so that you can access the information and send things back and forth. And like there's context, which he's got in here. And like context is what all the activities are inheriting from. But I still don't fully understand. Like, so you can see here's a context of main activity. And so you're like, okay, so I have a main activity in my presenter. Okay, and my main activity has a presenter. So this is how they're connected. And they've got access to each other, but then like what is that connection? Like here we can get context, but then like but what? Like there's nothing happening in the main presenter. But then if you go to the view, which is the main activity, like there's not a whole lot happening either, unless you're looking at all the fragments, but we don't really know fragments, but like everything is happening in the fragments. But it's still just loading it. But again, like switch is like a logic thing, but it's choosing that inside the view. And right here too, this is inside the main activity, which is your view. Like here's your case.
So our main question is how do they call the other ones to get them to work?
Oh, we have
Or
lots of main questions.
okay. I think we need to make a list.
Well, okay, so let's see. For now, this is what we have that works but isn't implemented correctly. So I have this user class that I'm populating. I don't know if we'll probably need to do the JSON in here or whatever we're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, I'm gonna have to change everything to pass the star count too. But we're not actually grabbing this at the moment because I don't know how to do that. So in the main activity, which we have a presenter, but again, I still don't know how to use it. So we've got our text views of everything, and we have our random number because right now it's being populated in the main activity, which is our view. So it's not supposed to be there. It should all be back in the presenter, which would probably be back in like my addition level class.
What do you mean you
But
don't know how to grab it?
To grab what?
You said that for the JSON file helper stuff, you don't know how to grab it. I didn't understand. You mean how to share it?
I don't know. So the way it's written right now, it's not accessing that class at all. And so to rewrite everything so that it passes through a presenter and gets the information right and then passes it to the view, like everything just needs to be restructured. And so it's the whole everything rewriting so like I can use my presenter class, which exists here, and I have a private user, which I can get my new user, but you have to put in main activity. So then it's like, okay, so I have to create a user that receives main activity. So then I have this user that gets context because that's your main activity. And then it's like, okay, so I can get my user and I can get my context. No, we're in the user. So I can get my user here, but like, then what? Like, where do I go from there? Like, am I taking that user and do I need to? So my presenter class now has my user, and now what? Like, oh, so does my main activity somehow have access to my user through my presenter? And if so, that's cool and interesting. But how do I get any of those things? And how do I pass any of those things back? And how do I manipulate those things?
From his it looks like he's importing them as though they were a library.
No, his are libraries.
Well, yeah, but I don't
So
see why
his
we
is-
couldn't do that too, because it has import scripturepower.model.config, which is the user info.
Okay, where are you looking?
That one is on main presenter class.
Okay. And what are you looking at?
Just at the very top where he's importing it, as though it's like you see the import java.util.array list underneath that. He's imported
No, that's how I go
macbeth.scripture.
to. Anything that you're using from somewhere else, it already does that import. That's already there.
Okay.
So, like, ours are right here too. Because that's how it accesses it. It's just like, okay, so he's got those, but how is he using that? Like, how is he saying? Let me think. So for ours, our user has a private integer of current level. How do we, in main presenter or main activity, access current level? So if we're doing that, let's say like we want to figure out the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So in here, he's got his library, which has access to all that information, and we've got a context, but like where in here are we able to say, okay, this is how the person chose this chapter and this is how it's displayed? Like, I can't follow the steps to understand where those connections are actually happening.
From presenter to from user and presenter, where those are coming back and forth.
Well, for us, yes, but even for him, like, it's like, so you've got your main activity, which is calling your presenter, which came from your main presenter.
Mm-hmm.
And then you initialize it, which must just be something that's there because main presenter doesn't have, oh, nope, it does. There you go, initialize, which means it's calling your config file and downloading your library, and then task execute is crossed out. So I don't know what that means because it's not commented out. It's just crossed out. But then you're like, okay, so now you're loading fragments, and that's your view because all the fragments are views. And he's displaying it in this fragment view, and would be displaying it in this fragment view, except for I don't think the bottom navigation view was working, if I remember correctly. But maybe it does. Maybe that's the part that shows all the verses. So again, like this is saying this view registered. No, that's not a view. Fragment. Browse presenter.
So we get to meet with him for 15 minutes tomorrow.
Yep, it's awesome. So it's like we have to know exactly what we need to ask, and that's where it's like overwhelming because I don't know.
So, okay, then we do know for a fact that we've got the user info and the help file, and those are going to be underneath the model. For the presenter, we're going to
Yes.
have main presenter, game presenter, and then level presenter plus star presenter.
We have so the game presenter is the only presenter that deals with everything in the game. So within the game presenter, we actually call the private class of Level Lab, which is the one that's doing your run-on threads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a presenter; it's just a class that's used in the game presenter. And then those are also calling other classes. So they're not presenters, but they're in the presenter.
Right. But we were just calling it presenter
Right.
to make it easier.
Well, no, because they're not all presenters. Like, the game presenter itself will be the one that does most of the logic and, like, figuring out which level and which things to happen. So it kind of takes place of a lot of the things that were happening in the main activity. It becomes like your game thoughts, but like then the let's see. So for example, here's what happens right now. We've got all these imports that we don't care about. So we've got all these things. And in our onCreate, we're just assigning the ID of each of those things to our space. We're ignoring the main presenter right now. So on next, so that's clicking the next button. It's passing in right there the current level, which we will technically need to be getting that because we're passing in the user, and all this information will have to be populated from the user. But at the moment, this was just starting at the beginning and trying to make it work. So we'll have to figure out that connection. But if you look at the UML as well, like that's, yeah, before I was trying to figure out if we had to go through the greet presenter every time, and that seemed ridiculous to have to get the user and pass through two presenters. And so changed it so we could access straight through the one. So then in here is where we're populating our random integer, which doesn't have to be. It can be populated up here, but in order to make it change every single time, it's easier to do it inside this function, which again, it's all in the main, so it's a problem. Here's where we're setting the operator because we know it's the plus. So these are things that would happen because we know what they are from the user. So this theoretically could be populated in another place, but this is just where it is right now because we didn't have access to another place before that. But we have to grab the user before the game can actually start. So once you choose anything, the user has to be loaded because in order to see the stars, you need to have the user access. And in order to know what level to continue from, you have to have user access. And so
we're going to create the random integer in user as well.
So that was where I had it initially. Well, no, initially I had it in here because this was the level. And so every time you would come to the level, but in order to get that, it's complicated because you can't really get into this until you already have your information to send to it. So we could create the random integer in the user. And every single time we do a level, because every time you pass, like every time you submit a response, it processes in the add level, but then it has to send the response back to the presenter, which will actually know. So you actually have to send back to the user too, because if you want to save accurately, every single process has to go back to the user. So we could send it back to the user and retrieve again every single time and just repopulate a new random integer there. Yes.
And then just
But at the moment-
stipulate that it has to be okay.
Right, and so it just would be a little bit different in the assigning, but it would be the same. So that's clicking the next button. So this is saying I want to do an equation, because next will be what repopulates it. So this is like your submit, your check response. So that's meaning that the next has already been selected, because next will basically clear the screen and reset it with a new equation. So making sure that something was actually responded. I have the check to see if it's an empty string here, because what I wanted to send from this to whatever place needs to be an int that's already parsed. Because that's a lot easier to catch right here, because you can see, like, if it's not right, it just toasts right there. So if we can't do that in this view, and we have to do it in a presenter, we will pass the string, we'll have to try to parse it there, so we'll have to check there, and then we have to send a toast back. On a UI thread, and then somehow get that number back to our presenter with the accurate
Information. Okay.
information there. And so it's just so much easier right here. But again, like, it's all easy here. Like, it just all works here. And I think I'm having revolt against, why do I have to do this thing when I figured it out here and it works. So anyway, if it's not a string, or if it is a string, whatever, and then we'll keep prompting until you actually submit a number, and then it will parse it, because you have to have an actual number, and then it passes that all in to the level add. So this clears all of our values, sets everything to 0, so that the next round they have to hit next again to repopulate it, which would mean it went back to the user theoretically and saved, and we retrieved it again. So anytime we needed to display a toast, if the answer is correct or wrong, it came through here. So if we wanted to try to use that toast with this one, we could, but that's not really going to work. It's going to be a separate toast, because we need to have somehow a place that says enter a number and, like, do it again, and you can't loop like Java because it's different. So this is the level, this is where we pass to from here. So if we get a number, then we pass it to this level add, and we start it.